Welcome back to another episode of Creating Magic. I am Dani. Our good friend and co-host Paula is not with us today, mostly because she's not a Star Trek fan. So I'm working on her baby steps. I'm working on Lord of the Rings with her as my focus. I have to start small.
I just learned several sad things about Paula all at once, and I just need a minute to kind of observe it.
So the people we have here, it's going to be a little confusing, is we have two Russells. One's on East Coast and one's on West Coast. So our East Coast Russell has been on previously for Star Wars, Harry Potter. We done anything else with you?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. And then West Coast Russell has never been on before.
Rookie.
So, well, Rookie, let's start with you. Let's start with your origin story of how you were first introduced to Star Trek.
Well, I'm old. So, TOS, original series, when I was a kid, probably early 80s, mid 80s, started watching it on syndication and fell in love with it. At the same time, would rent the movies that were coming out. I think the first Star Trek movie I rented, this is kind of weird because I started with Star Trek 3. I actually didn't watch the motion picture until after, I want to say after I had seen Star Trek 2, which is kind of weird, but I was a kid, so there you go. And as a kid, the motion picture is it's kind of tough to watch. It's a slow movie, but it's a great movie. Now I have more appreciation for it. But anyway, so I love Star Trek 3. I can pretty much quote every line. I probably rented it 100 times from Movie Gallery. And then Next Generation came out, what was that, 87? So I was, 12, I believe. And I really connected with Next Generation. I didn't realize how much I connected with them until watching this season of Picard. And you haven't seen them together like that. And it just brought up not just nostalgia. Yes, there was nostalgia, but I don't know. I think that show and those characters did something for me at 12, 13, 14, 15 that I didn't realize they did for me. And I know that sounds weird, but I mean, people connect with the Harry Potter characters and they connect with Star Wars characters. And, so I think I connected with that family, that core, and just didn't realize how much they had helped this 12-year-old depressed boy get through middle school, high school. And then you have the movies, which, the movies are cool. There's one that I didn't really like, but, and then to come back for Picard, I was like, man, I just, at the end of every season or every episode of season 3, I just would sit there and watch the end credits. I did every time. And just my God, that's my family. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know.
It makes sense.
There's too much to say. I've been thinking about that question since you even mentioned this podcast. I'm I don't even know how to it. I don't know. I love Star Trek.
Yeah, I think the first time I realized you were a nerd, so we've known each other for a while now, was we were in the offices and something was said and we both talked about how we both loved The Voyage Home.
Oh, yeah.
And I remembered that conversation for some reason because most people didn't know it. And I was too young to have been around that. But my mom had the movies and I loved Sea Life. And it was the Star Trek episode with whales.
Yep.
So it was always the one I would repeatedly watch because I liked ocean and space. And it just filled both of those.
Hey, when they showed, I don't know, but when they showed the bounty, the Klingon bird of prey, and then they played just that, I want to say 10 seconds of the theme from Star Trek 4. Oh my God. My heart leaped just when I heard this. I think it was a single trumpet that did it. And I was like, oh my God, that was so clutch. Oh, anyways, all right, I'm done.
East Coast Russell, because that's what you two are going to be referred to now. What is your Star Trek origin story?
Yeah, so Next Generation was what we watched during dinner growing up. My mom would make dinner and then we would all sit in the living room, and whether it was a rerun or something that had been taped or whatever it was, the thing that was on television was almost always an episode of Next Generation. So it actually wasn't until I was a teenager that I finally sat down and watched all of Next Generation and TOS from beginning to end in the order in which it was produced, because everything that I had seen up until that point had been kind of reruns. And then by the time I had started working, my first couple of jobs, Voyager started airing, and Voyager would air once at 8 o'clock and then again at 11, which was when I was getting home from work. So I had this great routine for a while there where I would get off work and I would come home and watch an episode of Voyager and then fall asleep. And it wasn't until later that I watched Deep Space Nine, and then I think the first of the Star Trek shows that I watched as it was airing was probably Enterprise. But everything else was, as I had access to it.
That makes sense. I grew up watching Next Generation, in the midline of it. So it had already been on air before I started. So I remember watching that one with my mom a lot. Voyager was the first one where I chose to, not that I didn't love watching Next Generation, but Voyager was the one that my mom didn't like Voyager. So that was something that I went out of my way to watch. And I remember the last episode airing and just saying Picard when 7 of 9 comes back. I was so excited, and I'm all aboard for Captain 7. I want Captain 7. I'm saying it now.
Amen.
I don't know anybody who disagrees with that. I've yet to see anybody be like, no, gross, not that.
Very true. Very true.
Seven may have had a controversial start, but she is very much a universally beloved character now.
Yes, and I love where her character has gone and grown. So this will be a spoiler-filled episode. We will talk about Picard, all the seasons if we want. I have a feeling we'll focus a lot on season 3 just because that's the one that just ended. So something that East Coast Russell and I did is that him, his partner Katie, and I would FaceTime each other and watch the show together. So we'd have it on mute. It was a lot of fun because especially I remember specifically when Worf first shows up, both of us had our arms in the air the minute he showed up, and I caught the video out of my peripheral that we were both so excited for that moment. What was y'all's overall opinion of Picard, any of the seasons or as a whole?
So I guess I'll go first because my thoughts are relatively surface, and I feel like West Coast Russell is going to have some more interesting things that I'd prefer to listen to be perfectly honest. So I came into this really, really excited about this show for the same reason that everybody else was. I got a lot out of the first season, connecting with not just these kind of classic characters, but being introduced to these new characters, seeing this kind of new, the kind of growth of the story and kind of where the universe had gone at that point. That world building is something that I've always found that I really appreciated about kind of Star Trek in general, and seeing how quickly they threw a ton of information at us at the beginning of Picard, and how well it kind of flew as the story continued really kind of worked well for me. I didn't super love season 2. It's not that the individual story wasn't great, and the characters, I thought the acting was great in a lot of places. I think they tried really hard to get our Lord and Savior Sir Patrick Stewart to do action scenes in season 2. And as much as I love the man, he's just not that guy anymore. So that was kind of tough to see them, kind of keep that on screen. And it didn't super matter because it kind of felt like they threw out most of season 2 for season 3 anyway, which I had very few complaints about. Just from a storytelling perspective, it was, season 3 was, of the 3 seasons, the most complete thought from beginning to end. It was also visually the most impressive of the seasons from beginning to end. Nostalgia obviously played a pretty huge factor, but as was pointed out earlier, these are all actors who have worked together for decades. They all know each other very well. There's just some instant, kind of charisma that comes with that. So it all came together and told a really great story with an ending that I have notes on. But overall, I thought it was a really great story.
Do either of you feel, so this is some posts that I have seen recently, that the third season of Picard was not of service to the series as a whole? I've seen like some comments that it was like living in this nostalgia moment versus moving Star Trek forward.
I would argue that the purpose of Picard as a series was never to move Star Trek forward. It was from the beginning a way to close a chapter, which was, Jean-Luc Picard's story and kind of how it came to an end. So I feel like in that regard, it succeeded with flying colors. But as far as moving Star Trek forward, we have an entire other really great show for that, which I think will be airing as this podcast airs. So
I also felt like it was a little like it was kind of passing the torch. I know we don't have anything confirmed for our lovely Captain Seven, but it felt like it was like a passing of the torch to the next generation of Star Trek. But that might just be me.
I agree.
Well, and you see them take this step in a couple of different ways. Admiral Janeway is very much kind of passing the torch off to a new generation of kids that are getting into Star Trek right now. Picard is handing off the reins to some of the other stories that are being told. This is not a singular thing that's being done. It really feels like a larger movement in the people writing these stories to kind of push this new generation of characters forward.
That's another question. Have both of you watched both cartoons that are currently airing of Star Trek, or are watching them at all? I love Prodigy, and I know West Coast Russell really enjoys Lower Decks.
I do.
Oh, it's so funny.
It's the best.
And the entire reason that it's so funny is that it goes out of its way to make fun of Star Trek. Like, it's not just a silly story, because we have that in the Orville. But it like specifically makes fun of the silliness that can occasionally be Star Trek, and that, like, I'm always here for that. As someone who deeply appreciates self-deprecating humor, like, I could watch that all day long.
Yes.
I would love, West Coast Russell, I would love to know what you thought of Picard as a whole, because you, at least from your description, seem just a little more connected to these particular characters than maybe Dani or I were.
Yeah, no, I for sure am. Like, I have to be honest, I've never watched all through Voyager. I haven't watched all through Deep Space Nine. When Next Generation stopped airing, I was like, I'm good. I don't need anything else. But I have watched like quite a few of those episodes. I'm just not connected to the other series as much. Now with like Prodigy and like Janeway being so, involved in that, I've definitely been going back and watching. Like, I'll look up like what are key episodes to watch, because I don't know if I can make it through the entire series, but no,
It's a lot of time trying to find coffee. Like, you could skip those episodes.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying. I think overall, I mean, honestly, the way you summed up, like, your thoughts are kind of similar to mine. Like, I really enjoyed like Picard, but season 2 was kind of a bummer for me. I'm not saying it was terrible, and I'm not saying the story wasn't great. It was cool having Q back. That last scene with him and Picard, I mean, I definitely had a tear. But I don't know. I think season 3 just needed to happen. And I'm wondering if they knew that season 3 was happening, and they just need to get through season 2 to get to 3. And at first I was like, okay, so Girardi's a fat-headed Borg queen now, which she looks so weird. But I was like, so we don't have her anymore. We don't have the other characters anymore. That's cool. But then I was like, I got over that, and I was ready for like everything that happened in 3. So, yeah.
I mean, when you start a season with Beverly Crusher,
oh, good Lord.
It's such an opening.
Right? And the musical score to go behind it. I mean,
So good.
That alone was like, that made this whole season for me.
Was there a Next Generation character that each of you like particularly like were drawn to?
God.
Like growing up, not in like Picard, but like,
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, Geordi was always my guy. In particular, his relationship with Data, those things I was like really strongly connected to. I think because I was younger, when I started, I missed a lot of just how unabashedly horny the first season of Next Generation is. And so stuff like Will and Deanna's relationship was not something that I like grappled with as a kid, and when I watched it again later, like those episodes had more impact for me. But as far as like a first watch goes, I would say Geordi.
And that's hard. That's really difficult. I think like back in the day, like when I was watching it for the first time, just the first part of the show, like when Wesley was on before he turned into Traveler guy, I really related to him just because he was kind of like the underdog trying to make something of himself. He just wanted opportunity. And for me, that was like I was younger, so that kind of spoke to me. But I mean, obviously, the relationship between Picard and Riker, I think, always stood out to me. Like a dude that even passed up opportunities to captain his own ship because he just wanted to remain faithful to Picard. You can see positives and negatives in both of in that, but I really liked that he just wanted to stay faithful to his guy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, ultimately, he did get his own ship, but I don't know. I can't pinpoint one character.
Yeah, I was always a big Deanna Troi fan and a Wesley Crusher fan, but in general, I am a huge Will Wheaton fan. He is the one person like I would travel to a convention to be able to meet.
I think Will, the person, I've always really appreciated, like as an adult, getting to know his story and the way that he was kind of treated by fans, and I have strong memories of him being at a thing that I was going to, and one of my friends telling me that I should shout "Shut up, Wesley" to him, and I was so mad that I didn't talk to him for like a month because I was just like, no, don't be a terrible person. Like that's not cool. Nobody wants to be yelled at. Like even if it's a thing he appreciated, nobody like don't do that to people. I'm glad that now, like, he had not publicly said anything about that at that time. It just kind of seemed like obvious, be a nice person stuff. But I'm glad that he has later in life been like, yeah, no, this isn't cool. Stop it.
Yeah. And I love that, like, because his character, like, you really can't bring back, minus that one little moment they did bring him back for Picard season 1. But that he's still so involved in it. Like he does all the Ready Room, which I love watching Ready Room. I love the behind the scenes stuff. I loved, especially when they had LeVar Burton and his daughter on, since that Ready Room episode is so good.
I also love that as a part of Ready Room, he is in a position to talk to actors who are just entering the franchise.
Yeah.
And kind of not coach them, but like listen when they're like, I'm really nervous about this. Like he's not there to be like, okay, here's how you do a good Star Trek, but he is there to be like, I've been through this. If you need someone to talk to, like I'm
you're now part
here.
of the family. Like you're.
And I think that's extremely cool. Like it doesn't really matter who it is. If they are entering this franchise, then they've got a couple of people to talk to, even if it's just like, is it supposed to make my heart jump when I see the uniform? Like, like that kind of stuff. I think is just very cool that he's there for.
Yes, it's supposed to. Anytime you see the uniform. Specifically, I love the new uniforms on Strange New Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
So I got burned by my love of the uniforms in Discovery because they changed it after 2 seasons. And the reason that that's important is my Christmas present the year that they changed it was the really nice jacket that was the uniforms from season 1 and 2 of Discovery, which now nobody knows because nobody cares about that uniform anymore. Yeah. So I love what they have done in Strange New Worlds, and I doubt that, just because of timelines that they would go the same route. But I'm trying really hard not to like fully go all out again and like load up on Strange New World stuff because I don't want to get burned.
I mean, if they release the Picard season 3 awesome leather jackets that everyone was wearing, I'm in.
Those were so great.
The jackets in Picard season 3 were perfection.
Are you sure they haven't released them? Because I thought I saw something that some
They
companies
might be, but I have not Googled to look for my wallet's sake.
Oh.
There's a company that makes jackets for basically every version of Star Trek, among many other things. But their jackets or that's one of the ones that I have for Discovery. They're really high quality material, and it would not surprise me if they had already done stuff for Picard.
Yeah, I just got my shirt for Strange New Worlds that I'm excited for.
I own nothing, so I'm way behind.
It's okay. You are
I
forgiven.
need a convention to go to.
We're gonna get you there. You're very close to Emerald City. And with the new content coming, they're gonna have Trek people out there because Emerald City is actually a very big con. We know Discovery is ending. We currently have Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy.
We have one season left of Discovery,
Yeah,
right?
we have one season left, and then it's done. So the only current non-cartoon show is Strange New World.
Yep.
And then, have we had anything else announced or no? I know we have stuff coming, but I don't think we've had any formal.
The movie.
Academy was announced, but we haven't been given any real details like launch date or cast or anything like that, just that it is happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are believing that Tilly will be in Academy.
I'm not mad at that.
I'm not either. I like her character.
Which is great. Section 31 movie.
That's right. The Section 30.
That's right. I forgot about that because that was announced when I was away, and I made East Coast Wrestle send me the story because I didn't have a powerful enough internet and I couldn't load it to see what it was about.
Posting snippets from the article.
I needed the information.
I think that'll be good. Michelle Yeoh is a badass.
So good.
I'm so glad that Michelle Yeoh's sudden rise to popularity did not suddenly give her so many other options that she did not feel compelled to come back to Star Trek. Like, I'm really glad that they were able to negotiate that and give her like her own thing, especially if she gets to keep being like weirdly evil, like Star Trek infiltrator lady. I'm super here for that
too.
I think sometimes the evil characters are the fun ones to play.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is another, like, back to Picard. What a spectacular villain throughout the entirety of season 3. I mean, I haven't felt like that about a singular villain in really any of Star Trek. Like there's always been this like larger threat, like it's the Klingon Empire or the Borg or the Dominion or like, but it's so rarely a single person that is the focus for all of that evil, and that was really well executed, I thought.
She was scary.
Yeah, I kept like throwing back in my head as I was watching all of her like scenes and her monologues and her just incredible acting. Like, it just reminded me of what I felt like with Khan the first time I watched Wrath of Khan. But also, weirdly, Krug from Star Trek 3, the Klingon captain, when he was on the planet getting ready to kill one of the people down there, Savick or David, or even young Spock. That scene on the bridge, I think it was the 8th episode of season 3, Picard, where she was like choosing somebody. I'm like, God, that's literally just right out of that movie. And I felt like that. I just watched Star Trek 6 today just because I wanted to. And, her dad was the villain, Chang. And I'm like, God, there's so many similarities. Like the spinny chair, I'm like, she's so good.
I mean, you could spend 2 weeks rewatching season 3 just to highlight the Easter eggs from every corner of Star Trek. Like, it's not a nostalgia thing for Next Generation. It is a genuine love letter to the entirety of Star Trek.
Yep.
On that, what about that moment of seeing all the ships at the museum?
Oh God.
So West Coast Russell nailed it with the music stinger as it was passing over each one of the ships. Like, that added so much to that scene for each one of the ships. Like, I know because Dani and I reacted the same time when Voyager's song started playing. And I'm a huge fan of DS9. So like seeing the Defiant made me really happy. Like all of that whole like panning across thing was really great. And as long as nobody remembers that the cloaking device that they stole was from an ancient ship where the cloaking device barely worked, and that was a major plot point in that ship, then it's a great scene.
That was awesome. Obviously, like Enterprise A is always going to have like a huge place in my heart. So I loved like I feel like every time, even when they brought the D out, I feel like there were a lot of scenes you could still see the A just kind of hovering way in the background. It's like I know that was like on purpose, because I'm sure they all think like, oh, all these Trek fans are going to want to see some action on the A. I mean, I was like, listen, let's get both of those Enterprises back out. I mean, the A is not going to be able to do anything, but because it's old, but still. I love that. All of that was great. Even Voyager, because I don't connect with Voyager like probably you guys do. But when that moment hit where she like hit the button and it went to the ship and the theme music started playing, I was like, oh my God, this is so incredible.
Yeah, it's
like I shed a tear for sure.
I love the ship of Voyager. I just love that ship.
Yeah.
But there was I think compared to like Next Generation, you had a lot more episodes that were ship based, just because they were trying to get home, and you saw a lot more sections of the ship. It wasn't just like quarters and the bridge and 10 forward. Like you saw astrometrics and where they grow plants. So you saw like a lot more of the ship through the seasons.
Cool. That's cool.
I mean, that was the big thing that separated Voyager and DS9 from, at the time, the rest of the Star Trek franchise, was that there was this dramatically increased focus on interpersonal development. This was not a unique thing about Star Trek, but it was most of the original series and Next Generation. The focus was the mission. We're on a new planet. We're doing a thing. This is a single story that we're telling within this episode, and then we're moving on.
Yeah.
And there were points within Next Generation in particular where we spent some time learning about characters, especially all of the time spent building up Tasha Yar, only to then shatter our hearts into millions of tiny pieces. Like versions of that throughout Next Generation existed, but never to the intensity that we got from Voyager and DS9. Like by the time those reached season 3 and season 4 for each of those shows respectively, you loved all of that cast. Like every single character had these kind of heart to heart moments that didn't kind of grow as much in some of the earlier shows. And so seeing more of the ship and was often an artifact of telling those emotional stories. And I loved the way that both of those shows did that so differently.
Yeah. I think one of the things I love about Strange New Worlds is the way the episodes are set feels like a callback to like Next Generation, where you're following a different character each. And I think that's why I love it so much. I love Picard. I love all the new series, but I feel like Strange New Worlds is my favorite series of Star Trek right now. Like, just because I love seeing a different character's perspective in each episode, but we also see like characters we know. I don't know. I'm just really loving Strange New Worlds overall.
Same.
On top of being amazingly pretty, it is the classic formula for a great Star Trek episode every single time. Mm-hmm. We've got an individual conflict, a little bit of character development, some great action. Like you can see the writer's room for that being like, we're not here to repeat a story, but let's stick to a formula that is known and loved. And they nail it every time in that first season. Just every episode just nails that classic feel to Trek.
And they have like those whimsical stories, because how like Next Generation would have those random like stories that were focused on like the kids, and they were a little more whimsical, and they did that whole episode with the Doctor's daughter.
Yeah.
Not to be mistaken with the Doctor Who Doctor's daughter. So then I'm like, that's a different
Doctor's daughter.
Different Doctor's daughter in space.
You call me a nerd.
Do you see my wall behind me?
Yes.
It's every.
I accept my nerddom widely. And I say
I
nerd
deeply
without like any disdain or
Oh, I know.
negativity.
I know.
Absolutely. I love that Christopher Pike's hair has basically become its own character. Like it essentially should have its own spot in the credits. There were like people waiting for the first season 2 trailer to come out. Like all I saw was, I swear, if they've changed his hair,
I met
we're
him.
gonna riot.
You met
Yes,
him?
you did.
I didn't. I guess I only sent you the pictures of me with Ethan Peck. I met
That made me
yes,
jealous.
both of them, but I didn't get any photos with him.
Dang.
Yeah, they both signed my Strange New Worlds comic book, which is not
That's
framed
awesome.
yet. I have to find a spot on this wall now.
Get on it.
You need a house for all your stuff.
Yeah, no, they were both very nice. Ethan Peck he's a great Spock, but he was also when he was a young teenager, freshly made teenager, he was in a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie.
Oh my god.
That's right.
Annie fell in love.
I went and got his autograph, and then so I was working a wand booth, and my friend Hannah came over to me, and she's like, "You did not tell me he was so cute." And when I had been up at the table, they always have the pictures you can buy to get autographed. Like they're from like random things that they've done. There's this one picture, and I was like looking at it. I'm like, why do I know this movie? Like I could tell it's old, and like I walked away. I'm like, it was Passport to Paris, which was one of my favorite Mary-Kate and Ashley movies as a kid. And I told her, she's like, we're going to get a picture now. So that's how the picture came to be, is that she found out that Ethan Peck she has not watched any Star Trek, but he was in Mary-Kate and Ashley's Passport to Paris when he was 13 years old.
Incredible.
And
he's easy on the.
He had a full conversation with us about it. He said it's actually one of the movies he's recognized for a lot. So, and he was very nice about it.
Have you guys ever thought about, like, how we have all these different iterations of the original series? New people playing the same character, and we just embrace it, and we love it, like, and we're cool with it. Because I am, like, even J.J. Abrams, and now with Strange New World. But, like, what if they did that to the next generation at some point? Or what if they did that? Like, how would we? I don't know if I'd be okay with that. Is that a weird question?
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Earlier.
It's like, what if we got a young Picard? And who's going to play that? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the catch, though, right? I think the only way that it would work is if it was like just a wildly different point in time, like him in the academy.
Yeah, like we accept a different Spock because it's before he's joined the Enterprise.
Yeah, I would be cool. I think I'd be okay with a Picard like in the academy. Or something like that, like
teenage
played by a
version.
younger
It
guy.
can't be a close.
Yeah. As long as it was someone who looked the role. I'd be that. I think
like the movies, the newer movies were phenomenal casting with their Spock and their Kirk and their Chekhov. Like it was phenomenal casting.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
But like,
loved that part of Picard though, where they gave a nice little nod to Anton. That was cool.
That was really good.
Yeah, that was really good. And like in season 2, we'll finally meet James T. Kirk in Strange New Worlds. So that'll be interesting. So I don't know. Because like right now the Harry Potter world is like, so there's been a HBO series announced. Has its positives and negatives, but everyone is very like, they're not our Harry, they're not our Hermione. And there's people on like both sides of the fence. Because
they're basically recasting actors for exactly the same time period.
Yes. For the same exact story, except it's TV form versus movie form.
Yeah. And I know this isn't going to happen, but the one like thing from that announcement that I heard, and it was the first thing that made me go, oh no, that actually would work, would have been if it had been an animated series. Because I feel like they could do an animated series of those books, and that way they could cover every single page of those books without worrying about whether they had a CG budget or anything like that. They could cast whoever they wanted, and it would be fine. But no, it seems like they're going full live action, and that's gonna be tough for a lot of people.
It's gonna be hard, and it's gonna be long running. They're saying it's gonna be a decade of television shows.
Not if no one watches it.
True.
Oh.
Very true.
True.
Yeah, I think I could handle a Picard, a younger Picard, like academy aged or
For
fresh
sure.
out of the academy, like first posting age.
That'll
Yeah.
be-
Trying to think what other characters would be fun to see in their youth. Because some of them were pretty young when they started.
yeah.
I feel like Riker in his youth would be fun just because he would be a crazy person.
He's definitely like
Or-
college partier.
Yeah. I think that would be cool to watch.
And all the Starfleet girls.
That's right.
You say that?
I wouldn't be mad at a young Janeway.
No, I want more Janeway content. I know she's in Prodigy, but I was really hoping for a Janeway cameo in Picard the whole season.
I was too.
Like a voice memo or like something.
The moment.
Don't get me wrong. I loved that we got Tuvok. That
We got
was super
Tuvok.
cool. But man, what did I was betting. If I would have lost quite a bit of money if I had bet someone because I was for sure that Janeway
I think
was
we
going to show up in
all
the last.
were very much in the belief that, and because she is still active in like the Star Trek community, like it wouldn't have been like a hard sell.
No.
Well, and even then, like that penultimate episode ends with the current like ranking admiral lady getting shanked in her chair. So I was like, oh, cool. Janeway's the next ranking admiral. There's the slide in. Like that makes
Yeah.
total sense. Nope.
Yeah.
What
Something bigger in the store.
would you guys like to see in the Star Trek fandom for the future? Like, what series are you excited for? What series would you like to see them do?
I love what I have heard so far about Academy. I have wanted a Starfleet Academy style show for a really long time. There was a point in my life where I thought for sure that the best way to do that would have been like straight out of DS9 for Worf to have gone back to Earth and just become like an Academy instructor. And like that would have been a great series. Honestly, he still looks awesome. He could still do
We
it.
could
Just-
still get Professor Worf. I'm okay with that.
Put him on a colony somewhere where he's like running maneuvers with a bunch of kids that are like training for,
With
special
Tilly,
assignments.
can we just get that?
I would 100% be down for that. I think that
Him
would
running
be
a class
amazing.
of Tilly, I'm sold.
But yeah, I'm excited about whatever Academy ends up looking like, just because I think that that's going to continue that push from kind of younger audience into some of these newer shows, and so I'm like conceptually here for that. Terry Matlas has not been at all shy about wanting to continue the story with Jack and Seven and Ravi into a different series, and I hope that
Same with
Picard
Jerry
got
Ryan.
enough.
She has retweeted everything about pro Captain Seven.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I hope that show did enough for Paramount that they're at least considering that as a potential spinoff show, because I think that has the potential to be really interesting, as long as the focus is like evenly balanced between Jack and Seven.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be a really interesting show.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I wouldn't want, and maybe you guys would disagree, but or maybe you agree, but I love how Picard like hit all the nostalgia bumps and closed out a bunch of storylines, or even like continued storyline. You can just kind of use your imagination where Crusher's going to go, where are they, all that stuff. But I would not want to see a bunch of cameos in Legacy, if
No.
whatever it's called. Like I wouldn't want Picard to show up just
No.
because Jack's the show. I wouldn't want Riker or Troy to show up for whatever reason. Now maybe like one time if it absolutely made sense, but I would hope that they would leave every good thing with Picard in Picard, and let's just move on with these
Yeah.
new characters.
No,
That's-
I fully agree. Like you pulled the nostalgia lever and it worked really well. Now, like, tell an original story. Like I'm fully here
Yeah,
for
that just happens to have someone we know her history.
yeah.
But I don't need a bunch of cameos. I don't need moments of going back to storylines. Like we kind of closed out. Even Seven's storyline is pretty much closed out too.
I mean,
that was
anyway. I don't care. That would work.
for sure. Yeah,
But not
that was
Picard.
a big part of what turned off a lot of Star Trek fans when Deep Space Nine first launched. There were a lot of kind of hardcore Star Trek fans at the time, be they kind of toxic fanboy nerds or not. A big part of it was they spent so much time in that first season repeating that, and at one point literally out loud in text that he was not Picard. We had that kind of nasty handoff episode where the two of them didn't get along very well, and then like immediately followed it up with Q treating him like he's Picard, and I think that weighed down, that like constant reminder that this is not the show that you have been in love with for the last however long. You just, once they started telling their own story, I really loved DS9, and it became kind of a really big deal. And so, yeah, if you're going to have legacy, it just needs to be out of the gate its own thing.
Yeah. And like, he's dead and we all hated him. And I don't want him to do anything crazy to bring Shaw back, but I loved the banter of Shaw and Seven.
Yeah.
Like, I hated it, but I loved it.
He did such a good job making me hate him as a character. And like, I will always appreciate that, because like I knew from the beginning that was his job. His job was to make me not like him, and man, did he succeed, because he
from the first season.
Oh man, if I had to rank, not just as like a person, like, oh no, I'm a garbage person, like he even owns up to it. I was like, nah, dude, you're not even like a good captain. Like you are the most by the book. Like I just couldn't deal with it. But it was all on purpose, and he played it so well. That was something that I don't want him to come back.
No,
his story is over, and that's fine. I don't mind. I think it would be cool if Seven like talked about him.
Yeah.
Yep.
To other people, like this was a great example of how not to be a captain. I think that kind of thing, holding him in memory, but still being like, I learned things from him.
Yeah, I don't want them to figure out a way to bring him back, because I've seen like posts about that. I'm like, oh, I don't like that. No. Bring him back via like captain's logs.
Flashbacks.
I'm okay with that, but we can't have him existing in the universe.
No.
Well, we're going to wrap up. Do you guys have anything else you want to share about our love of Star Trek?
Go watch more of it.
Yes, because we want more content.
So like this is kind of a big thing, actually. This may be a good way to wrap up for the three of us. And I'm sorry for taking your show hostage for a second,
Go
Dani.
for it.
If somebody has never seen Star Trek before, it's an intimidating thing. There is an enormous amount of stuff now, and it's only getting bigger. Where would you tell people to start if they've never seen it before?
Strange New Worlds. It's current. You don't have to get past the cringiness of some episodes of the older stuff and the technical lacking. I feel like season 1 of Strange New Worlds, it's only it's going to be, as of release of this episode, on the second season, so it's easy to catch up. I think it's a good way to get into the universe without being overwhelmed. I've thought about this before.
I can tell. I was like, that's a really quick answer. But that's a good answer, though.
No, I agree. I think if I had to think, like if it was someone who...
If I'm trying to get you pulled in, this is where I'm starting. I'm not telling you to go back to Next Generation. Once I get you in, that's another story.
Yeah, so I think for me, it depends on the person. Like, I think if it's someone that I know really loves modern television and like deeply appreciates like current special effects and stuff, and like they're not like the deepest nerd on the planet, but they really like sci-fi stuff, I'm fully agree with you.
Yeah, you're not telling them to go watch Tribbles.
Yeah, if it's someone who is, my age or slightly older, they appreciate older television, maybe they love like classic Doctor Who or something, then I feel like I'd be a little more flexible in recommending like Next Generation or original series as like a starting point. But I think for most people, you're right. Strange New Worlds is really kind of the best place to start.
Yeah. Well, even Russell, you had said like you're not watching all of Voyager. It's 9 seasons. It's a lot. So you've been picking key episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
She spends a lot of time looking for coffee, Dani. Like it's a lot.
I can't relate. I don't drink coffee.
That's sad.
That I don't drink coffee, or she spends so much time looking for coffee.
Oh,
I think the funniest thing about her like demand to have coffee and it doesn't actually get brought up in the show, but I almost wish that it had, but we didn't really talk about addiction the same way when that show was coming out, is that like Starfleet Medical, like caffeine addiction is like an instantly fixable thing. Like she could have at any point been in sick bay and been like, fire up the EMH and stick me with a thing for like the next little while. We don't have coffee because everything is broken and we're trying to limp our way home. Like, let's go ahead and nip this caffeine addiction in the bud for a little while. No, she was like, you know what? There's a nebula over there. We might die, but I might get coffee out of it. Let's go.
Love it. Oh, that's great.
Any thoughts on where you would tell people to start?
I honestly, I think I agree with you. I mean, if you're not someone who loves the classic TV, you're going to hate Next Generation because of the quality. You're going to hate TOS because it's the 60s, but once you get hooked on Strange New Worlds and you get those characters, like, oh, well, let's go back. Let's go see that.
And it's building to those characters.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you really could like stop watching season 1 of Strange New Worlds and be like, man, I really like that. Where do I go for more? Right here. Here's exactly what the show is leading to.
Movies or do the series. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, keep creating.
And for everyone listening, tell Dani you want more Star Trek stuff on the podcast.
Yes. More Star Trek.